This meeting is being recorded.
So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us at our first business events webinar, which is really providing an overview of the business events sector. It's so great that we're able to bring you these webinars direct into your lounge rooms or offices around the state. Before we do get underway, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we meet. We're all obviously meeting on various lands today, and pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. This is a great initiative that we're able to deliver for the industry. We're running a series of these webinars over the next couple of months, covering a whole range of different topics, and we really are diving into some in-depth topics. So hopefully we'll be able to provide you some really good insights into accessing the business events industry and really what you can do to actually engage this market a lot better. I'd like to thank our industry partners who are our partners who are helping us in the delivery of these webinars. So I'd like to acknowledge obviously the Victorian State Government. With their support, we're able to put these webinars on for industry, but also our delivery partner, which is Meetings and Events Australia. And I'm going to introduce you to Joe shortly, who will be running this session and all of our sessions over the coming months. And we're very lucky to be working with specialists in the business events and meetings and events industry to be able to deliver these webinars for us. We want to make these sessions as interactive as possible, and both Joe and I really encourage you to ask questions throughout the webinar, whether that's by raising your virtual hand and putting your camera on so we can see you, or alternatively, please use the chat function and I can facilitate the questions with Joe as we go through. So please utilize those two features. I'll just make one request that if you're not speaking, if you don't mind just putting your microphones on silent, that would be awesome, and we wouldn't mind seeing your pretty faces. If you are there, maybe don't sit behind a black screen. It'd be good to see you. I can see Jason's probably the bravest one out of all of you, so there's a few extras there. So thank you everyone for putting on your cameras. It's lovely to actually see all the smiling faces and of people beaming in from around regional Victoria. But without further ado, I'm going to throw over to Joe Child, who's the National Education Manager at AMEA, who is going to facilitate the remainder of this session. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'll drive my screen, so hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm going to apologise in advance for a slightly croaky voice, but I'm sure we'll make this happen quite well. So it's Meetings and Events Australia's pleasure to work with Business Events Victoria to deliver these programmes to you all, and very nice for me to see you and meet you virtually. So lovely to meet so many new people in the overall events industry. So today's topic is really an overview of the business events sector. Some of you may have some familiarity with that, so the information will be new to you. For others, it might be stuff that you're not so familiar with. So feel free to, as Chris said, ask questions as we go along. If you've got a question and we know we're going to address it in just a few moments, we might just pause that question and move it along a bit. But interruptions are very welcome. Absolutely want this to be as interactive as possible. And there'll definitely be some time for some questions at the end if you haven't had an opportunity to raise the topic or make a comment throughout this session. So as Chris said, my name's Joe. I'm the National Education Manager at Meetings and Events Australia, and my contact details showing up there for you on the screen. Please feel free to take a note of those. I'll be delighted also to link with all of you via LinkedIn so we can share other ideas and generally connect and discuss more about events through the years. So for those of you that are not familiar with our organisation, Meetings and Events Australia is a professional association. We're an association that represents all of the event industry, not just the business event sector, though it's fair to say we have a lot of members who are in that sector. So we're a national and independent association, and really our vision, if you like, is to foster excellence and professionalism in everything event related. And we do that through training, such as activities like we are here today, advocacy with different levels of business and different levels of government, and developing business-to-business links for industry professionals. And that includes our Evolve conference. So I'll be coming to Melbourne at the end of this month for the Evolve conference, and might see if we can make sure you all get a link to that if you're available for some great PD. The Evolve conference is a really good opportunity to meet other industry professionals and engage a little bit in all different things event related. All right, so let's move on to what we're going to look at today. So hoping to talk a little bit about the economic contribution that business events brings to Australia. Got some data to share with you there just to give you a bit of an insight into the value and how big this sector really is. We'll talk a little bit about who these people actually are. Who are these business event visitors that we might be quite interested in attracting to our venues, our regions, or our own businesses. And also give you some insights into what a business event delegate and a business event manager are looking for when they are thinking of placing business or thinking of coming to your location. And as we said earlier, lots and lots of opportunities for some great questions and comments from the room. So this is definitely an interactive session, so we'd love you to share your thoughts and ideas as well as hearing from ourselves. So when we're talking about business events, it's kind of what's in a word, really. All sorts of different terminologies are thrown about. And I'm probably going to use the term conferences in quite a generic way, if you don't mind today. But we're really talking about anything that people are experiencing because of their work. So while we really want our business event delegate to enjoy themselves and we want them to experience all of the value and all of the benefits of our location, they're there because their job has sent them, or they're there because they feel it will be valuable for their job. So the focus is very much on sort of the corporate experience, if you like. So these can be things like conferences, where people like the Evolve conference that I mentioned earlier, where groups of people working in a particular industry sector or a particular area of interest get together to learn from others, to share ideas, and to really develop their skills or their knowledge within a particular business sector. But it might be things like exhibitions, so showcasing products, might be things like sort of smaller meetings where individual businesses are spending some time maybe increasing their sales capacity, or delivering some training to their team, or simply engaging in some business meetings that they don't want to do in their own workplace for whatever reason, from larger conventions or larger training sessions, or anything work related is really what we're talking about when we come to business events. So all of those meetings that you and I have in our office can also obviously take place somewhere else. That's a business event. We also often use that sort of meetings terms in the same way. And again, we're really then thinking of anything corporate, but also sometimes maybe some of those networking things. So some of those corporate events and corporate meetings can actually be quite good fun. So they're about us engaging with each other. So we're engaging with each other today in a virtual world, but ideally from an event perspective, we'd like us all to be face-to-face and closer to be able to engage more actively with each other. So there is a lot of corporate networking type events that happen across all sectors of all industries, and they're often a great opportunity for us to encourage people to maybe come to our location, go somewhere a bit different, experience that type of activity in a different place, a different type of venue, or have different experiences alongside that, whether that be within your product winery, in a rather more exciting venue, or at somewhere that's not normally the place where you think about having a business type event. So the whole great exciting thing for me about the corporate event sector is that ability to think outside the box a little bit, and maybe get people out of their comfort zone a bit too, and do things in the corporate world that might be different, because those are the experiences that our business event client often really calls for and desires and loves, because they're all about mixing up the normal and getting people to do things slightly differently. And often when we do things differently, that's when inspiration and innovation really begin to develop. So I'm going to just unpick some of that a little bit, and some of these terminologies may be very familiar to you. I just want to talk a little bit more broadly about the different types of business events that we often are engaging in. So conferences is a big one, and we often use that term conferences or seminars when we mean any type of business event, really. But a conference tends to be a meeting that has some sort of knowledge base, educational base, which is often about expanding knowledge or getting people together to share knowledge, such as we're doing today. But the important thing to remember with these is they always have a social element alongside them. So often they have social events, whether that be a welcome event or a closing event, where we try to get people to be able to spend more time developing those business to business relationships and networking with each other, building some of those connections that they can use going forward in their own businesses. So even the most educationally aimed business event conference will have a lot of social side to it. And for lots of people in the room, their space or their location might lend itself beautifully to that social side. And often, actually, that's where all the good business gets done. All of the good work is often at the conference. I myself regularly go to conferences very much for that ability to network with like-minded people and to expand my business connections. And that's generally a very large aim of most conferences. And so having those great spaces available where that can happen is really important. So if that's you, if you've got a location or a venue that lends itself to people connecting well, then that could be something that you'd like to explore further. Might be things like product launches, so new products or new service. We want to raise awareness of that, maybe invite current or potential clients to come and hear about our fantastic new product in a great space or a great venue or in a great location to generate a bit more buzz and interest. And that might be buzz and interest from the buyer or the potential client, or buzz and interest in the media as well. So we see quite a lot of that happening in some of the more gorgeous regions around Australia, where people might be launching products in your fantastic region because it's very visually stimulating and has a lot more interest to the media than simply doing that in a more generic venue in a city centre, for example. Networking events are a very large part of the business events industry, not just the ones that are aligned to conferences, but lots of my clients and my colleagues will spend time engaging with others at networking events. So many sectors of the industry, of any industry, have that. So it doesn't have to just be the events industry. So there are many of us may belong, for example, to organisations that regularly get together in order to encourage people to know each other a little better. So that's often a very engaging and interesting part of the business event sector. A lot of team building events going on out there. So things that are generating greater teamwork or productivity, or maybe some team cohesiveness by taking people away from their normal environment to generate ideas, or maybe to explore changes in the organisation, learn about new things, or simply get people to just spend a little time with each other outside of their normal environment. Another good opportunity for us to get involved. And any events that are held by special interest groups, people who might be lobbying for change, discussion groups, or groups of people that come together because of a particular issue in your area and need space to do that, and need some time and some ability to meet in a cohesive and collaborative way to raise issues for change and discussion. Excuse me. We also see a lot of more formal things like board meetings. So board meetings, whether that be that annual general meeting or some of those decision-making meetings, might often take place outside of an organisation's own space, or that they need a big enough space for members of the public or other interested parties to turn up and come along to. Big milestone events are very popular. So some of these business events are rather jolly, a little bit more fun, celebrating achievements in an organisation, whether that be awards or maybe longevity, 20-year anniversaries, that type of thing, for a particular organisation, a particular group, or a particular industry sector. And some of the things that we often go to ourselves, exhibitions and trade shows. So if you've got significant space where people can come and promote their products to interested parties, i.e. prospective buyers, that's another large part of the business event sector. And having those type of events in different spaces and having those type of events in different areas of the state help to expand the business for the prospective exhibitors. So quite often they tend to share where they go and go around the state or go around the country in order to kind of encourage greater participation and encourage new business opportunities to come to the exhibitors. And things like leadership retreats, so getting away from the office to sort of create strategy, or maybe to take difficult decisions, or to just to spend some time away from the usual environment, particularly when it comes to thinking far into the future for where an organisation might be going. So big or small, lots of different types of events. So let's not just think about conferences, although quite often that's what we do. We want to try and expand our thoughts a little bit in terms of the different types of business events that we might like to attract. Now, one of the big things here is how big, how many people. So I know for a lot of organisations or a lot of venues, it might be that you don't have large meeting space. So you'll be interested, I hope, to know that actually most of these aren't very big. So about 2/3, around about 66% of business events tends to be less than 100 delegates. And lots of them are much smaller, the smaller type meetings. So I've got a bit of data sitting there on the slide. You can see that that even a sort of a bespoke or venue or a small destination in terms of small destination with small numbers of accommodation can easily accommodate some types of business events. You don't have to think about these 500 or 600 or 700 people at a major seminar or a major convention. Most of the stuff is much smaller than that. Generally speaking, I work with a lot of clients for whom 60 or 70 is their main business event. So that's really achievable for many of us to manage. So we don't need huge spaces to accommodate this very valuable market. Now, it is a very valuable market, so I just want to share with you the value of the business events market in Victoria. So worth 9.9 billion direct expenditure. Well, that's a lot of money, isn't it? And 65,000 people employed directly and indirectly. The reason it's valuable is that delegates tend to spend, and we tend to call the business event visitor a delegate. Delegates tend to spend more money than our normal leisure market clients. So they spend about $336 per night, because that's incorporating the costs of their stay, the activities within the business event itself, and then the knock-on effects of expenditure into the event sector to make that event happen. The other thing that's often a valuable piece of information for people who have other business is that they tend to be midweek. So most of us are attending a business event because it's part of our work. And so we tend to do that within the traditional working week. So they're often midweek, outside of holiday periods, because obviously we all have other calls on our time and during those times, and normally outside of weekends. So they don't kind of get in the way of other business that you've got, but they can perhaps support activities that you want to undertake at times when you're quieter with your other business, which can be very valuable. So certainly something to consider if you're looking to increase usage of your product or service at a time when you're quieter, perhaps. Excuse me. A little bit more data. So this comes from just before COVID. I've got some post-COVID stats to share with you as well. So this comes from the Business Events Council of Australia report. So the Business Events Council of Australia is made up of a number of associations, including AMEA, Meetings Events Australia, and we collate data that comes from the Australian Bureau of Statistics and the Tourism Research Visitor Surveys, which happen to give you an indication of the value. So you can see that across Australia, business events is big business. So there's over 484,000 business events happening every year. in a normal year, and we're getting back to it. The value is sitting around about 17.2 billion. Wow. And a big contribution to our economy as a country. So really, really important for us, both in larger centres and our regional centres, and very important in terms of employment and economic value to Australia as the Australian economy. So fortunately, COVID did really throw us a bit of a curveball, and I'm sure that was true for all of you as well, sadly, but we are bouncing back. So recently, Tourism Australia did a little bit of research on how do people within the domestic market, you know, the Australian businesses, how do they feel about events? Are they feeling confident about getting back into the event space from a business perspective? And I'm delighted to tell you the answer was a resounding yes. So just share some of that with you. COVID often is quite challenging for people to think about what's coming next. So hopefully this will cheer us all up a little bit. So 67% of businesses surveyed are planning something within the next 6 to 12 months, which is very positive, particularly for all of us in that space. And nearly 3/4, 74%, thinking that within the next year to 2 years, for sure, planning business events again. And most of those, 60%, are going to expect that they're going to involve some form of travel. So they're not all happening in their own location. They're prepared to go further afield to have these types of events, which is very positive for any of us who are outside of a major metropolitan area. 94% are planning to host an event in their home state. So I guess the take-home message there is for sort of speculating and prospecting in your home state, because I think that the sort of closing of borders sort of has made us all a little bit nervous, although hopefully those days are past. And so for a lot of businesses, they're thinking, well, we'll stick in our home state because we know that we can get home again. And obviously the travel time is somewhat reduced. So Victorians should be prospecting in Victoria because looking in your home state for business, these people are itching to get back into that marketplace. So we should all grab some of their business, I think. 84% are also thinking that the business will be at least the same as it was pre-COVID, and a little less than that, 81%, think that their numbers will be the same. So they're thinking of spending the same amount of money. They'll have the similar or maybe bigger numbers. So we are really, really bouncing back. And anecdotally, I was at a meeting only this morning that was saying exactly the same thing. So people are getting busier, and businesses are interested in getting back to kind of normal. There was a lovely quote that sort of in that research, which I don't have on the screen, which sort of said, I think we just got to get on with it. And I think that's a quite a strong sentiment across the entire business sector to get back to where we once were. From my perspective, I think there's another really very high value of business, of getting involved in business events within communities, within organizations, and within regions, because it kind of increases the knowledge value in your region. It helps to build skills within your teams, skills within your areas, and also can help your own obviously economy and your own business economy, but also the economy within your region, and also kind of builds those business relationships within the region where people are working perhaps collaboratively together and sharing some of the business with other people within their region. And one of our webinars coming forward will talk a little bit about how you might do that as a bit of a team approach within your location. Also increases capacities and skills within your own team. Get your team members to maybe learn a few, expand their skill sets, learn new things, which can be very useful for retaining those staff, enriching the jobs that they do, particularly if you are finding it challenging to find great staff members, or maybe keep them, or are concerned that perhaps they might be looking for the next opportunity. And also is nice for one's own communities and one's own regions to see that other people are experiencing what's lovely about where you are. They're also spending some money in the area, which is always very valuable, but increasing that community pride on the fact that things are actually happening in our region. So there is actually quite a lot of interest too in going outside the obvious, you know, moving sort of slightly away from a major state capital, for example. So there is quite a lot of positive feelings about regions, particularly in Victoria. There's a lot of positive feelings about trying to support areas regionally that had challenges, whether that be the bushfires or the floods, and really sort of giving something back to those regions. In fact, I think 61% of Victorians were interested in doing business outside of the metropolitan centres and going into the regions. Some of the knowledge of regions is better in some areas than others, and so there may be a little bit of work to do to try to tell the story about why a region is very valuable or interesting, or what those unique selling points are. But you see that a lot of people do have a relatively decent working knowledge of different regions. So if you're outside of the centre, then, or outside of any metropolitan area, please don't think this isn't for you. Knowledge building and giving them a great reason to come. For many of you, just look outside your door and there it is. Getting people to experience what you've got to offer to tempt them to place business in your area is sometimes the challenge to overcome, and we're going to talk at another webinar all about how we might do that. So hosting people's visitations, so hosting what we call familiarization visits, is a great way to get people to see what you see when you look at your region and encourage them to come. Now, unsurprisingly, a business events buyer is going to want the same sort of things as any of your other buyers do. So most of our product is all about the quality of what we've got to offer. So for a business event sector, quality is king, always important. They want nice accommodation. It doesn't have to be 5-star luxury. Obviously, that's always very lovely, but it's not absolutely essential. It needs to be fit for purpose. So beautifully clean, relatively well appointed, in a good spot. Easy to access, and easy to access if we're spending time in more than one building. So the quality, so near to wherever the business event is taking place for the overnight stay accommodation. The quality of the meeting space is important. We've got to have a nice space that we can actually do business in, whether that's a small or large room, depending on the size of the event, is important. And another huge thing, which is the same for any business we're in, is great customer service. You want your team members who are involved with the business event sector to care that they're there, to really want to do the best that they can for all of their clients. And I'm sure that that's something that would be very easy to deliver from everybody here in the room. Things like good audio visual, which we'll talk about in just a minute as well, and competitiveness of pricing. And also they're quite keen for you to be kind of keen to have them. So we need to be quite responsive to inquiries, which we will talk about in just a few moments. And that's quite important because often when we're placing business events, we're busy and we are on a bit of a tight deadline. Just to give you a little bit of a personal example about that, I telephoned a venue near where I live on Friday of last week to get a quote, and it hadn't arrived by this morning, which is actually a little bit unusual, to be honest. And on my list of things once we've finished our time together today is I need to ring them back up and go, where's my quote? And I'm actually quite surprised it's not here yet. So you can see that responsiveness is really important. And I'm quite fond of this venue, so I'm definitely going to ring them back. But some people might not do that if they don't know so much about you. So being responsive is another big important requirement from the business event sector. And this data.
Can I just jump in? I think one of the other things to point out on this slide is the on-site accommodation at venue. While it rates very highly, I think what this shows for venues that don't necessarily have on-site accommodation is the need for your collaboration and to actually work with accommodation partners in region and making that easy for the client. We do have another webinar series coming up which talks about all the collaboration and how you should have a destination mindset, I suppose. So while that's there, I think it's important to call out to say that does not preclude you from engaging in the business event sector. You just need to almost work with your partners so that they're not having to go to accommodation provider as well? Can you connect them? Can you get them the information that they need so that they can have the meeting with you, but then stay, whether it's across the road or down the street, with an accommodation partner in region?
Absolutely. And I think that's true wherever you are, because if you think about it, most big convention centres in Melbourne, in Sydney, in Adelaide, they don't have accommodation. You know, they've got hotels nearby-ish, or they've got a range of accommodation nearby-ish. And so what we're looking for is, we want accommodation. We don't really want a very long bus ride. But for example, if we can walk, that's fantastic. But if we can't walk, and you with your collaborative partners have said, look, we're going to run a minibus truck between the venues, fantastic. It's just about making it easy for us. I always used to say that conference delegates don't walk anywhere because they're ladies in heels, but that's not really true these days. But certainly, if you do think actually it's a beautiful walk, but not if it's raining, let's do a minibus shuttle. Perfect. And actually, that's a really good way of making sure everybody gets to the meeting on time. So often a very valuable thing to do. The other thing that, though, we do need is to be kind of clear about sort of the COVID safeness. So although we're living with COVID, you will need to be able to deliver a COVID safe plan, and have a level of bit of flexibility if things, if there was another outbreak, for example, is important. And just to make sure that your staff have all been sufficiently trained in that area, and maybe have COVID marshals, etc. It's becoming one of those sort of housekeeping things, a bit like sort of suitable occupational health and safety, and a bit of a nod to sustainability. COVID is now on those housekeeping things that we sort of expect to happen when we're visiting anywhere. So let's jump in and have a quick think about who are these people? Where do they come from? So I think broadly, there's kind of 4 groups, and this is very broadly. So government departments are big spenders of business event dollars. They do a lot of business events. Sometimes they book them themselves. We'll have a little look at those in a moment. And sometimes they engage others to assist them. And the people that they often engage are something called professional conference organisers, which is really an event manager. So we often hear the phrase PCO, professional conference organizer, used. And those are people who do jobs such as myself, where we assist our clients to deliver an event. Professional conference organisers are really useful people to know, because they are often a conduit to lots of clients. There might be industry associations, so people such as Meetings and Events Australia, who are placing business in Melbourne for a conference this month. So associations do a lot of business events, because one of their major benefits to their members is often about getting together and doing training or educational type activities. And it might be your local businesses, your local corporate clients, we're calling them. So we'll just have a little look about those kind of one by one, and think about how we're going to reach these people. So one thing to think about is, what are the key industry sectors where you are? Because when we're trying to sort of prospect, if you like, for some business in the industry, in the business event sector, it's useful to think about what sort of business is going on in our state or in our area, because that's probably going to be the type of industries that generate the business events wherever you are. The list on the screen are key industry sectors within Victoria. Obviously, they're not all in every location, but there may be a number of those areas that resonate with you, because where you are, there's a lot of that type of activity happening. So it's very useful to think about what businesses are engaged in these sectors that might be interested in placing business events, and thinking about having meetings, seminars, trainings, whatever it might be, but also what government departments are active in these spaces, who are also having meetings, trainings, seminars, etc. Because both sides of that, the public and the private sector, will be engaged in hosting those type of events, or bringing people to attend those type of events. Government departments are really useful, because government departments often run events in order to deliver strategy. So it might be that they bring people together to increase knowledge, or they bring people together to learn things, which is all about sort of delivering on their overarching strategy to develop skills or capacity or bring value or volume into an area for economic benefit. So it's quite useful to think about the departments at your state and federal government level that have a very regional focus, if that's where you are. Or if you've got, for example, if you're in a wine region, which are the government departments in Victoria, the state and federal, that are interested in that sector? And it might not just be the tourism departments, it might be the, primary industries, those type of people. And those type of departments would often be hosting events and can be very easily persuaded to do that in a regional area as well, because that's often part of their remit. It's the reason that they exist. Might be that if you're not the local council, your local council might also be very actively engaged in all different types of events, not just business events. And usually they are very keen to spread that benefit out to all sorts of different operators. So reaching out and engaging with your local event team in your council is another good way of considering how you can get involved in this particular sector wherever you are. And thinking about anything that might be happening in your local area, shire, local council, etc., that you can be participating in from a sort of more local government side. I'm conscious of the time, so we're nipping along slightly, but happy to take some questions, obviously, on all of these going forward. And if there's any questions popping up in the chat, we'll pick those up as well. I talked a little bit about PCOs, or event managers. It's a bit of what's in the name. I've used the PCO, the professional conference organizer, as a bit of a conduit term, but it's really anybody that manages events or helps clients manage events, and they're often a conduit to the end client. So as a PCO, I'm quite often looking for suitable venues or spaces or just different things to offer to clients when they say, look, we need to run a new sales event. What should we do this time, for example? So our website, MEA's website, other websites will have a list of different people who are our members. There are lots and lots of them out there, and obviously Business Events Victoria is a huge resource for you in this kind of space in terms of reaching the buyer, and regularly they obviously also receive inquiries which they will then push out to you. So really good to have a very strong relationship with the team at Business Events Victoria as well. So business events buyers, so PCOs can be very also a great source of knowledge and assistance, because they want to work with you. So it's a collaborative relationship. You and they will share the delegate, they'll share the buyer, you share the end client. So they're also a great source of knowledge and assistance, and are very keen to support you in delivering great service for their clients. So they're a great source of skill and knowledge as well. So they can be a good friend to you in developing your business event sector business. Talked a little bit about industry associations. The local industries in your area, whether that from the Chamber of Commerce or the business events groups through to industry associations that represent the industries that are active where you are, the industries that are your primary industry or business or economic source. Those people regularly have events. They have conferences, they have trainings, they have seminars, they have networking events all the time. So thinking about who are the movers and shakers, if you like, in the industry areas, who are the people that know everybody that are members of associations. They're very useful to champion bringing their association to your area, and can be advocates or kind of your own unpaid sales team to get people to come get their association to do business with you. They meet regularly. Part of industry associations' remit is usually to foster that business-to-business relationship and to encourage people to engage with each other. And events is such a perfect way of doing that they regularly have all sorts of different events and are looking for new ideas and new things to do. So whether you don't have to have an event space, maybe they could just share the experience of whatever you do. So, for example, if you're a golf club, maybe you could get them to come and do a fun golf day in your area or in your location, as an example. If you're a winery, maybe it's the barrel tasting with the winemaker, which gets them to interact in a more enjoyable way than simply sitting in a meeting room. And of course, we shouldn't forget your local businesses. So when we looked at that, we looked at those lovely data earlier that said that all of these businesses are happy to stay within their own state. So attracting local businesses from inside your area and from a little distances away from your area. So don't just think about people in the main metropolitan areas. Think about the larger businesses within your own area that might also have the need to engage their corporate team members in all sorts of activities, whether that be for formal education, formal meetings, or more kind of team building activities is often very good target market. Now, one of the things we ought to think about with those is who's the gatekeeper, who's the person that makes the decisions. So the person that makes the decisions is often at a director type level or a managing director or a manager level, but there's a gatekeeper to those people sometimes, and they're often the executive assistants, or what when I was growing up we would call a secretary, but these days EAs are a much more challenging and highly skilled role, and so executive assistants are often placing event business, and they're often the event planners for their organisation. There are a number of executive assistant networks on things like LinkedIn. There's an executive assistant membership association, and you may well know who the EAs are in all of the local businesses, and they may already be people that you have a relationship with. But they're great people to showcase what you have in your location, or what your service or product is, because often they're the people that are trying to find interesting things for their organisations to do. Now, one of the things that's getting quite interesting for me from an event manager perspective is that the time between having a great idea and wanting to instigate the event is sort of getting shorter and shorter. So it used to be that, traditionally it was sort of 6 months to over a year, and even longer. Fantastic. Those days have gone. So it's getting a lot shorter. And so the time between the date of the inquiry and the date of the event is reducing sort of down to about 3 months these days. So it does mean that that responsiveness becomes more important. And that might be something to consider in terms of the capacity that you have within your team to be responsive. And I think maybe that's something that we all learned quite well in COVID, that we needed to really be very responsive very quickly to client needs, because we weren't sure how much business we were going to get. So I think we've all got quite good at it, actually. So I guess with short lead times, the things that sort of come back to that is that the great thing about that, it means that confidence is returning. People want to do events. Sometimes they're holding back a little bit just in case COVID gets in the way, but I think that is reducing sort of almost day by day, actually. Although we talked a little bit earlier on the slide about needing a little bit of responsiveness or flexibility if a clients do need to postpone because the team suddenly all gone down with COVID, for example. So having a level of flexibility in what might be your standard cancellation or postponement plans is quite important. So something to consider and discuss amongst your teams about what you'd like to do about that. I said earlier about that being responsive, so really needing to respond to inquiries very fast, and I'll talk about how fast in a moment, and kind of a bit of a sense of urgency. So the client often feels the urgency, that when I phone up and ask for a quote, I sort of really do need it right now. We appreciate that it's not always possible to turn things around immediately, but we do need to feel that there's a sense of urgency coming back from wherever we're trying to place business. And I'm sure you would agree with that when you're also making bookings or spending your own money. You really want people to feel that you're an important client and they are interested in having the business. So the turnaround time's probably reduced, which obviously has an operational impact on other things that you're doing. And it may also mean that the people who are taking the inquiries, as well as the people servicing the event at the end, you might need to think about sort of upskilling them in terms of that those needs, if those are different to your current client base, for example. So I think another piece of advice would be to be clear about what you're offering. What have you got? What is the product or service that you have that would really fit this lovely sector, this lovely, valuable and interesting sector. Think about what your USP or your unique selling point is. What are the products that you really want to push? What you can do really well, and what maybe you're not so interested in getting involved in. Although a can-do attitude is highly appreciated by event managers and business event managers, business event delegates, and sharing that with your team is also important. Though I do make the note that understanding what you're offering and what's your USP is great, and your team should be really clear about that. But if they're a bit focused on what you can't do, that can be a bit counterproductive. So another, I guess, key point there is whoever's fielding inquiries needs to be the best person for that job, and it might be that that from the business event sector's perspective, you might want to get somebody who is interested or engaged in involving with this sector to be handling the inquiries, rather than your normal front desk or your normal customer service team members. So some things for you guys to think a little bit about. I guess to engage with this sector of the industry, it's good to think about the industry areas, or the types of industries which might be a good fit for the product that you've got. They're a good fit because they're near you. They're a good fit because you feel like you understand what makes them tick, and you believe that you can service their needs effectively because you feel you know a little bit about that area. Think about who's already holding events or who's already coming to your business, because all those people that might come and use your service on an individualized purpose, they all work somewhere. You know, they may be engaged very actively in holding business events in their day job. You just don't know it because you're servicing a different type of business need for them. If you've held business events before, what worked well and what might benefit from a bit of change, and what are the barriers that you have either identified or are worried about, which is worth unpicking and maybe thinking about how strong those barriers actually are, or they can also help you kind of get a bit more of a target prospective list of either areas, sectors, or organisations or types of event that you might be interested in engaging with. What will probably happen is you'll be lucky enough perhaps to get something like a request for a quotation or proposal. That sometimes happens that, you know, you might get a random inquiry that says, oh, I'm thinking of having a business event in your area, or are interested in bringing this client, or my organisation would like to come and use this experience or use this service that you have, which is really great if that actually happens. But what they'll do beforehand is they're going to let their little fingers do the walking, as we used to say, or they'll do what we call a bit of a desktop audit, which means they're going to go mad and do an online search. So if you really want to engage with the business event sector, it's important that that's really clear on your website, and that the services that you offer are clearly defined. And I always think it's quite a nice idea to actually have a events tab on the website. And if you've got, if that's possible, and even if it just filters them through to a pretty standard page, it sort of shows, look, I'm interested in being in this sector. And if you know that you do a lot of different types of events, then separating that again from sort of the business type event to the leisure event is also quite helpful, but not the end of the world if that's a little bit too complicated. So one of the things I often suggest that people should do is go away immediately and look at your own website, but look at it as if you've never seen it before, and say, if I was going to try to bring a business event here, does my website look like I'm in that business? Does it look like I'm interested in having that type of business? Which might mean a little bit of updating in some areas. So the other thing about managing those requests, I talked a little bit about the need for speed, is that I'm sure that your teams are all of these things already, but it's a really useful idea to be really careful about taking the initial inquiry very effectively. It's not so helpful from a business event perspective if the answer on the telephone call is, oh, Joe's not here today, she's not back till Thursday, I'll get her to call you. We appreciate that people have days off for sure, but it would be more useful if the person that was answering the phone maybe could take some really good notes about what was required. And I find having a bit of a checklist is a big help for me to do that. So if you have some sort of developed checklist, we're happy to provide you with some examples that sort of that trap everything that you're going to need to know to be able to go back to that person beyond, and that will be a little bit more than just their name and telephone number. Then it means that when you do go back to propose or to ask questions or to send them some information, you're sending very relevant things. And if you're the person that really is responsible for going back to clients or for helping to promote or to sell that product or service, I sometimes think it's worse if you didn't take the initial phone call, picking up the phone yourself and going, thank you so much for your lovely inquiry. I just wanted to clarify, even if your lovely person has taken fantastic notes, it's great to have that personal connection. So that works quite well. I think you do need to be able to respond real fast, and I really appreciate that for lots of us in busy times with less staff than we used to have, that's really quite tough. Some sort of acknowledgement within a working day is fantastic, and 2 to 3 days of sending out the information really makes it look like you really want the business, and we really want you to want our business. So we're all like that, aren't we? Whatever we're buying, we want whoever's selling to us to care that our business is valuable. I also think it's really useful to have an events at your venue or your product's email if you really want to get engaged in events, and you might have that already. Just find it easier because things otherwise can get lost quite easily if it's just sort of a general information type tab. And again, all of you, we're doing business with people. So the business events sector, they might look like big corporates, but it's just people. It's us all working collaboratively together. So the personality of your event, of your organization and your service needs to come across. You need to be yourself, because we want to engage with lovely people that care about our mutual clients. So having that personality come across is good. And if you do have online inquiry forms, which can be pretty useful, I think just be careful that they are getting responded to really quickly, because they can be a little bit generic. And if you've just got a standard one, it might be that the information that you're collating from them doesn't give you enough intelligence about what your event inquiry actually wants. So sometimes they need a little bit of updating to be able to be used effectively for a business event inquiry, or in fact any event inquiry. And obviously making sure that anything that people are looking at on your website is up to date, is accurate, that maybe they can find you easily on Google, and anything on Google that says when you're open is accurate and up to date, and you've checked it out. And pictures are fantastic, so great pictures are good, and so try to make sure that you're really showcasing yourself in the most positive way. So just a little bit more about what we love. So from a business event customer's perspective, if I'm the event manager working with you or team, I want that you care that our mutual client is going to have a fabulous time, obviously. I'd love a responsive service. I want to feel that we're part of a team together, that we're both servicing the need of our end client, and that we'll work really closely together, and we'll be sort of on the same side and on the same team. We really look at the places that we place business with, the services that we engage with are as professional as we are, and that there's a responsiveness to COVID. Our attendees, the business event delegate, they just want what all of your customers want. They want a great service. They want a memorable experience. They want to go away and go, God, that was marvelous. I loved it. It was fabulous. What a great place. They want to feel like they're an individual. And I want to see something new. And money can't buy things that are good. That special stuff. The things that you don't do for everybody are the things to really roll out for the business event delegate if you can. And just a few kind of tangible ones. If you've got audio visual, it's really handy if you know how it works. So make sure that the kit works, because if we can't see a presentation, for example, like today, you can't hear properly, or we're not sure how we put this plug in this plug to make the projector work, that's quite a challenge on the day. So investing in a little bit of skills in that area for more than one team member is really useful. Having the meeting space that is fit for purpose, you know, so that it's a nice space for us to do business in is important. Nice catering, appropriate choices. So, you know, have asking questions about who the audience is, so that we feed them things that are suitable for the work that they're supposed to do and the type of people that we've got in the room. And obviously things being clean and in a good condition. So again, that's not really any different from any other client that you would have. The intangibles tend to be about that responsiveness, a flexibility to having that can-do attitude, and also, and again, this probably isn't very different from any other client either, that your team have a really great attitude and an interest in the client being there, knowing who they are and why they're there, caring about the experience that they're going to have, and are really working very collaboratively across all of the suppliers that you're working with, all of the team members, to make people feel that they're welcome and you're delighted to see them, which is pretty much true of all of us. So that brings us to the end of the kind of presentation type, but very happy to take any questions or comments, keeping a bit of a close eye on the time. I know people may have some calls. I'm just having a quick look in the chat box. I can't see anything frantic coming up at the moment, but please feel free to ask questions or make any comment if you'd like to.
That was great, Jo. Thank you so much. And I think it's a really good overview of, you know, the business event sector, and I hope everyone's gotten something out of that. I think there's lots of key takeaways in that, and I think we've just really, you know, just scratched the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. And so we do have the webinar series that is rolling out after this, and I think we'll go into a lot more of these topics in a lot more detail. And well trained Jo and I are. We're a great double act. She's moving the slides while I'm talking. So the next webinar, yes, series continues. That date's actually wrong, so you can see how good I was doing these slides yesterday afternoon. It's actually the 21st of June is the next webinar, not the 14th. So ignore that. It's the 21st of June, and the topic is going to be actually marketing yourself to the BE sector. So it'll be at the same time in 2 weeks' time. So really encourage you to come along to that, because we'll go into a few of the topics that we started to talk about today in that session. So again, we'll just go into a bit more of the detail. So is there anyone who's got any burning questions before I go through our last points and round out the session this afternoon? Has anyone got anything there? Jason, that doesn't look like Jason. Jason's changed.
No, Jason had to go to an appointment, so I've stepped in. I'm his wife. Just wondering, is this being recorded? Would we be able to access it again, or?
Yes, so the whole session has been recorded. So over the next couple of days, we'll get this up onto the Business Events Victoria website, and you'll be able to review the recordings online.
Oh, fantastic! Yep.
I'd also just sort of say, for the up and coming webinars as well, please do have a look at the series, and if you've got a particular question that relates to one of those, let us know in advance. We're very happy to tackle that question during the content of the webinar, because we really want them to be tailored to what you would like or what you're interested in, and happy to take pre-questions so we can make sure we answer them for sure. So feel free to share that information with
and I think if there's anything burning that came out of today that you think of, I know, sitting in your office this afternoon, feel free to flick that across to myself. On the call as well, or on the meeting this afternoon as well, is my two colleagues, Adeline and Steph, who some of you would know as well. So, you know, between us, there's a good brains trust of people in the room that are, you know, really here to help and support industry to upskill in this area and have every chance of attracting this market. Before we do round off, noting that it is 2 minutes past 12, one thing I did want to raise, and maybe some of you would be aware of this, we are actually running a Region of Victoria Business Events Scholarship Program at the moment, with applications closing on the 17th of June, which is Friday week. What this actually is actually 6 placements in a diploma of an events management course delivered by AMEA, and the fabulous Joe is the coordinator of that program. So we're really trying to support employees. As we all know, staffing workforce is a major issue for our industry at the moment. And so this is a great initiative that we're really trying to support people who are interested in the event space to actually upskill and get more skills in the area from their events perspective and get the efficient, appropriate training. So jump online there. It's just you can see the URL, Regional Victoria Business Events Scholarship. You can also find the links through the Business Events Victoria website. But effectively, that's a free diploma course for an individual go through. We've got 6 places, and there's a lot of information online in relation to that. We actually ran an information session for that Monday last week, and we do have that recorded. So if anyone is interested and they want to get a bit more information and was unable to attend that session, please let us know. We can send that across to you as well. But if there's no other burning questions, I don't think anyone's sticking their hand up or putting any other comments in. Thank you for those who put some comments in there about enjoying the session. Thank you everyone for attending today, and yeah, I hopefully look forward to seeing you at the next webinar on the 21st of June, where we'll go into a bit more of the marketing yourself to the BE sector, and then in early August, the one after that will be on sales tips and techniques in early August. So thank you everyone for joining today. Enjoy the rest of your cold Tuesdays, and we'll hopefully see you all soon at the next online event. So thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was very helpful. Thank you.
Yes.